Blessings to everybody. And as you can see, Restore the Snyderverse is the topic. And basically, I'm summarizing the reasons for it. First of all, the Snyderverse is comic book accurate. Superman Batman number 55. It actually inspired Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice in terms of dialogue and even the context in which a certain thing happens, as you will see here. Not bad. Okay. There you go. Oops. Okay. So you can see that Batman v Superman draws inspiration from Superman Batman number 55, where Batman is about to try to annihilate Clark Kent. And Superman saying, Batman, Bruce, listen to me. Just listen. To what? And in Batman v Superman, as you know, Superman comes down and he says, Bruce, please, I was wrong. You have to listen to me. Right? And there are many other, moments where in Batman v Superman, we're drawing directly from various comics that Chris Terrio gets inspiration from, David Goyer got inspiration from. And the iconography and scenes are just, more a real life representation of those scenes from the comics. So, a very good point here that must be noted is that the Snyderverse is pulled directly from the comics. Another very important point for you guys to realize, this is a Marvel and DC fan group called Marvel and DC TV. And a survey was done on March 19th asking, which one do you like? Do you like Zack Snyder's Justice League? Or would you like James Gunn's Justice League? Well, he had a Justice Gang in his Superman movie. And they show here James Gunn's Superman. They show Zack Snyder's Superman. And the results of the poll, 743 people voted for Zack Snyder's Superman to 104 who voted for James Gunn's Superman, and 4 just laughed off the whole thing. And the point behind it is, if you look at Superman 2025's box office, it kind of gives you a good representation of what kind of fandom supports James Gunn's stuff. Because if you were to convert Man of Steel into today's dollars, Man of Steel would have made way past $920-something million to James Gunn's Superman movie, which is now at $613 million. And it just shows you how much vaster, how much wider, how much bigger the audience for Zack Snyder's movies are. The appetite's way bigger. It shows you that it's a minority of people that support James Gunn's stuff. So that's the second point. Now, third point, when we look at the lucrativeness of the Snyderverse, and when I say Snyderverse, I am talking about Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman, and Zack Snyder's Justice League, that totals almost $3 billion. I'm excluding Justice League 2017 and also Studio Squad. I have not included those. If you do that and you include Aquaman, you'll get past $500 million, $500 billion. But I'm not going to do that. Now, compare it to James Gunn's movies, and the grossing so far, at least in terms of his Superman movie, is 600 and something million. And we haven't talked about how profitable the Snyder Cut was. Now, I say all of this to give you a summary of what's really going on here. Add to that the repeat, or shall I say, the rewatch value of Zack Snyder's movies. On first look, you're going to get an impression. Oh, there was an age of heroes before the age of heroes known as Justice League. And we get the understanding that the Justice League is sort of a representation of the old gods in a new format. For example, when you look at the powers of Zeus, where he releases lightning from his hands, we see Superman releasing heat vision from his eyes, and it's kind of comparable. Like Superman is the new Zeus. When we look at the old gods like Artemis, and then we see Batman using his gun almost like a arrow, you get the feeling that Batman's like the new Artemis. And then Ares, who's coming down with his axe here, Wonder Woman, who is his niece, she is, I'm sorry, his sister, she is like the goddess of war. And in that respect, she is also like a reincarnation of Ares. And you can visually see these images. And it's so interesting seeing these fans put this stuff together. It's fun to watch because, again, a fan did this, not me. Um, Besides the parallels, we also have beautiful wordplay, and Cristeria was brilliant with that. So you will see, in for instance, in BVS, we see what promises are worth, how many good people are left, and then you see Bruce contradict himself later on, and he says, "I'll make you a promise that Martha will not die today." You see that the heroes can sometimes literally contradict themselves. And this is a typical thing in comic books. When you read, for example, The Dark Knight Returns, where Batman is deterring the mutants from using guns, yet he uses a gun to gun down a mutant, and he uses his tank with all these missiles and stuff on them. So there's all these contradictions. But more importantly, these contradictions show growth. So, for example, at a certain point in Batman's life here in BVS, he's very skeptical about people and things, and he also sees Superman as a threat. But later on, when he realizes Superman is more human than even himself, he's now making a promise to Superman, and he keeps his promise as well. When we look at Superman, when he's losing hope because he could not stop the bombing that happened in the Capitol. He says, "My world doesn't exist anymore." When Lois Lane tells him that, the big S on his chest is a symbol of hope and it means something to people. But later on, after he realizes that Lois Lane is his world and his anchor, on reflection in the mind discussion with his father, he comes back to Lois Lane and he says, "This is my world, you are my world." So it seems as if he contradicts himself, but no, he's grown as a person, and this shows growth of the character, which is amazing what Zack Snyder and Chris Terrio and David Goyer were able to do with these characters, help them to evolve and grow and develop in what Zack Snyder calls the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's theory of the hero's journey. So it was beautiful stuff. And again, you don't see this generally in Marvel movies. You may get a little bit of growth with Iron Man, but usually it's situational growth. It's not development of the person. And this is where Zack Snyder really took time to develop these characters. So no matter how much criticism people talk about BVS, we see Batman go from being narcissistic, inward, and also skeptical of the heroes in the world to becoming somebody who's more sincere, more direct, and more hopeful. With Superman, he lost hope in BVS, and he becomes more hopeful, and it rallies him in his weakness, his physical weakness. Now, he was mentally weak at a certain point, but now he's physically weak, but he's mentally strong to defend his world. He claims the world as his own, and before that, he was not claiming Krypton as his own, and even if he did, he was saying his world didn't exist anymore. That is the world of Krypton. But apparently, he claimed his new world, which was the Earth, and his attachment to that world, the center of his world, which was Lois Lane. So that was really awesome to see. And again, this is the sort of thing that I like about these movies. They have depth to them. No man in the sky intervened when I was a boy to deliver me from daddy's fits and abominations. No, no, no. I learned way back then. If God is all powerful, he cannot be all good. And if God is all good, He cannot be all powerful. And Superman comes through. Lex Luthor thinks of him as a god. And he stops the abomination of abominations that he talked about from landing its fist on Lex Luthor. No man in the sky came to save me from Daddy's fist and abomination. The irony is that his child, blood of my blood, was about to land his fist of abominations upon Lex Luthor, and Superman intervenes. It's just such beautiful wordplay. And Lex Luthor has a lot of puns and wordplay and everything he says. And it's so funny to see Superman actually fulfill the thing that Lex said God couldn't do. But still, at the same time, Superman got killed by the abomination that was Doomsday, leading Lex Luthor to feel that his theory was correct until Zack Snyder's Justice League when Superman rises from the dead. Then you see, after Lex has given Clark Kent the ultimatum, he comes to Lois Lane after saving her and returns to her and says, "No one stays good in this world." At least that's what he's feeling at that moment. Again, very contradictory, because after Superman dies and he shows that he's good in this world, giving his ultimate sacrifice, his own life, his own mortality, you see Bruce Wayne say men are still good. So it's really funny to hear these what we call contradictions, but it's a method of growth. You see Bruce go from being very skeptical of people and things in the world to becoming very hopeful and adopting Superman's basic character of being hopeful and positive. You see Superman start off, no one stays good in this world. Then you see him sacrifice himself for the whole entire world, which is literally an altruistic thing to do. Even though some other people would say it's objectivism. You know, these, again, very narcissistic people who would say things like that. Here we see Superman perceived through two different eyes. We've seen him through Batman's eyes, we see him through Victim's eyes, and we see him through Flash's eyes. Here he's seen as a savior by this woman, and in Zack Snyder Justice, he's seen as a destroyer by Flash. Even more interesting, he's seen as a destroyer and a very vengeful person by Batman as he approaches Batman when Batman does his bat signal. So when you see him slam into the earth like that, and everybody's like, that's not Superman. That's how Batman sees Superman. And that's what you got to understand. Zack Snyder's giving you different perspectives. So these are depth, which you don't get in many comic book movies. All right. You get with the Snyderverse trilogy, you get depth, you get things pulled from the comics that give depth and meaning to them in similar circumstances. You know, it's definitely comic book accurate to a very high degree. You're also getting something that's better than what has been offered to DC, particularly the DC universe, right? After Aquaman and Shazam, the DC universe just had flop after flop after flop after flop, and it has not recovered since. Okay. Every single DC universe we've had has all flopped, including the present Superman movie. And a foreshadowing of this was Justice League 2017, when the studio interfered. They wanted to make a Marvel movie. They brought in a Marvel director. And you would think the studio would have gotten smarter by then. But no, they decided to bring in another Marvel director, and they have gotten yet another flop. And this flop has flopped even more than Justice League. It is not even going to make Justice League numbers. And this all goes to show you that the direction the studio is going in is wrong. And two, that the only thing that really is viable right now, that is proven to be viable, at least in terms of box office, is the Snyderverse. So that the Snyderverse should be restored. And I keep on doing these videos because I believe that the time to do that is now. It's not later, it's not next year, it's not next week, it's not next month. And to begin the process of restoring the Snyderverse, it involves bringing the Snyderverse trilogy, Man of Steel, BVS Ultimate Edition, and Zack Snyder's Justice League to cinemas and IMAX. That is the first step in the right direction. And I do believe that that is an important step that must not be skipped over because both BVS The Ultimate Cut and Zack Snyder's Justice League has not seen globally cinemas. And most people love Man of Steel, and there's always the version that's more colorful that people will want to, Zack Snyder colored Man of Steel. So we haven't seen that version in cinemas. So there's a lot to look forward to. And since Man of Steel is so well loved, put it in cinemas. Again, my suggestion is a very simple one. Introduce Man of Steel into cinemas for 2 weeks. Follow it by Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition for 2 weeks. And that's also recolored. So that's great. And then put in Zack Snyder's Justice League into cinemas for 2 weeks and break it up into two parts. Part one's in the morning, part two's in the evening, and just run them. Make it an announcement. I would love to see it globally released, but I don't know if they can do that, but I would suggest they do. And let them run. And it also, remember, you also have Justice's Gray version. So if they loved the colored version, then you can put Justice's Gray version into cinemas for 2 weeks. So you could have 8 weeks or 2 months of the Snyderverse trilogy, and there are different versions of it. So you can actually do 2 months of the Snyderverse trilogy and rake in some cash, man. Rake in some money. It will sell more DVDs. It will sell more digital copies. People will be more aware of it. There's a whole bunch of money to be collected here. I believe nothing short of $1 billion is willing. You get extra $1 billion off of this movie because of all the memorabilia, all the toys, all the digital copies. People like Blu-rays. People will buy the Blu-rays again. You will get a lot of people tapping into this because it's not only better than the other DC films we have seen so far, but it's also deeper, and it appeals to. It's much more wider in its appeal. It's not just exclusively for children. It is anybody of any age could go see these films, and there's so much to be gathered from it. There's so much to study it for. It's just the absolute natural thing to do. I don't think DC's putting out any other movies for the year, so that leaves the slate for DC movies open. And yes, James Gunn is trying to push his DCU, but he's not. He had no interference of one kind or another, and it still didn't do well. So Abdi and DeLuca are the people I always appeal to, and I don't know if they'll say yes to this. I hope they do, and I know they did the full circle thing with Zack Snyder, but the fact that they did the full circle thing with Zack Snyder told you that these movies were already ready for the big screen. That's the whole point. It was ready for IMAX, big screen. I didn't get to see it. I would love to see it. I would pay money to see it. You see, I live in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't live in the United States of America. I'm sorry. This would have to be a global release. It would be a limited global release. Now, they may extend it further to get more money out of it if it's really making money. You never know where this thing can go. But it's something. It is a risk. But it is a sensible, practical, calculated risk. Putting these movies into cinemas, old movies, but putting them into cinemas is a calculated risk. And here's the thing about it. You don't have to spend a whole set of money making movies for this. There's a demand there, right? This is the way to find out if the demand is worth it to continue a universe. It's that simple. And you try to make that possible. You try to satisfy fans of a wide spectrum of DC. The fans who like James Gunn's universe and his thing, they're there. They're not going to go anywhere. Okay? So why not entertain fans who've been asking for this since 2021? Restore the Snyderverse. Why not entertain them? Now, from all appearances, the fans who've been asking for Restore the Snyderverse, the Constantine fans, the fans who've been asking for a Superman solo film for the longest while, whether it's with Henry Cavill or whoever, but a solo film, not an ensemble like what James Gunn did, a solo film. They're there. Okay? They exist. Then you have the Henry Cavill fans. Then you have the Ben Affleck fans. Then you have the Gal Gadot fans. Whether I like Gal Gadot or not, they're there. Okay? You have an opportunity as a studio to do something monumental, memorable, historical in Hollywood. And you have the keys to it. And you're not going to lose out by doing this. You're not going to lose out at all. You're going to have people side with you. You're going to have people with you on this. There'll be so much celebration. Again, it will make history. Jason Kilar will forever be known for a guy who pushed for the Snyder Cut, whether you like him or not, and several other people. And you have the opportunity to do this and to bring peace to the fandom, to also unite the fandom. Because James Gunn fans do not have to be at enmity with Snyder fans. So this is the thing I never understood. I don't understand why James Gunn fans are attacking Snyder fans. And Snyder fans, I understand, because they're retaliating, because they're asking for something, and the James Gunn fans come out and say Snyderverse is dead or blah, 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 blah. Why are they trying to stop Snyder fans from seeing Zack Snyder's vision continue? I don't know. Maybe they feel intimidated. Maybe they feel it's a threat to James Gunn's thing. Well, we now know, if anything, it's more damaging to the brand to continue solely with James Gunn and to try and remove everybody else from the equation. It's damaging to the brand. It's not helping. It's better if the Snyder fans got what they wanted. The Matt Reeves and the Batman fans got what they wanted. Like, Jim Lee is probably the most sensible guy I've seen out there. He knows more is better. Because if the Snyderverse is successful, it means whatever other projects DC has on the table, they can ride that success. And once, even if they do fail, there's revenue there to help them keep going onwards. And for some reason, I can't understand why the people who are responsible for putting out films and managing and producing films could just never see that. They're just so short-sighted. They only see one thing, and one thing they want to get at, which is DC Marvel crossover, and they can't see beyond that. And they can't see there are multiple ways to get a DC Marvel crossover. And maybe it's not the way how you envisioned, but it is a way. And the Snyderverse can very easily cross over to Marvel through Deadpool. So if you want a DC Marvel crossover, Ryan Reynolds is your go-to guy there. Because we even have fans putting up jokey stuff with Deadpool and Batman and Superman, and then this Superman, James Gunn Superman. Man, that crossover shit that you could do with Deadpool and with Harley Quinn, those two characters, who Harley Quinn's been misused in the DC EU and also in the DCU. Harley Quinn has been misused. And it's so sad because Harley Quinn is a character that's kooky like Deadpool and can break the fourth wall very easily. And you can use Harley Quinn to do. But, I just don't understand the management of Warner Brothers. Like, they don't have the vision. They don't have the foresight to understand what they have. Which is a pity, and they continuously fail. They continuously fail at what they're doing because they're not listening to the fandom. They just don't listen. They listen to a certain section of the fandom who are actually the minority. And in fact, I don't even think they're significant. I think they side with what they want to do. They decide with what the studio wants to do. So the studio tends to them and facilitates them. But to be honest with you, they're not the fandom. The DC fandom are now becoming more vocal. And we have a lot of people who are not Snyder fans who are, criticizing the direction in which Warner Brothers is going. And I knew this was going to happen because as you progress more and more and more, it becomes obvious you're not going anywhere or you're not doing anything because everything you try to do to engineer to go in a certain direction, it flops because people don't like it. And the worst thing you could have is a movie that flops. Critical ratings, fans don't care about that. Um, you know, uh, I don't know why the studio is focusing on critical ratings. Critics are important for if you're going to win Academy, and even then, they're not that important. I've seen films that have Rotten Tomatoes, rotten scores critically, and at least with respect to them, and they won Academy Awards, lots of Academy Awards. Okay, Studio Squad won Academy Award for outfits and design. So I'm just saying that if you're talking about critical acclaim, which don't give a fuck about, none of us give a fuck about. Okay, the critics get on board eventually. They eventually got on board with Zack Snyder concerning Zack Snyder's Justice League. Okay, that's that's a film that he was fresh and it was probably his highest rating since 300. And the point behind it is that you can look at what critics do, and a lot of them are not even properly trained critics to start with. They're just people who give their opinions. And generally, the critic's opinion and the general audience opinion do not mesh. Okay? Just very recently, their Jurassic World, which has just made over $850 million, Jurassic World was critically panned. Meant absolutely nothing because the audience knew what it wanted, and the audience wanted more dinosaur. And it didn't matter what you said, the audience wanted more dinosaur. And they gave them more dinosaur. Regardless of whether you think the tropes in the film are the same, it doesn't matter. It's what the audience wants. Who could give a fuck what a critic wants? You're in this to make money, aren't you? Okay. So you have to ask yourself these fundamental questions. Why would a studio, with all the evidence given to it, move in a direction that is brain dead? Because the fans don't like what the DC fans don't like what the studio is doing. I'm not even going to talk about Snyder fans. Obviously, the Snyder fans, I've picked this up a long time ago, but now DC fans are seeing what the Snyder fans saw in the beginning. They're catching up to it and realizing, wait a minute, you're not ever giving us what we want. We asked for X, Y, and Z, and you never give us. Even the Superman movie, now DC fans are seeing, we wanted a Superman more like what we saw with David Cornsweet in the in his audition. We didn't get that, right? And I'm saying this though. I didn't particularly like what he did in the audition either, to be honest with you. Okay, I disagree with certain stances that he took in there, but again, that's subject to interpretation. That's me. I'm not everybody. Okay. My point being that you have some people who read comics, you have some people who have a general understanding of the character, but not necessarily the specifics, and you may even have a misunderstanding of a character because they haven't read comics like that. But the point is, at the end of the day, if nobody wants to come and see your movie, it doesn't matter how good you think it is. They're not going to go see it, and that's that. They could pay money to go see it. But I'm guaranteeing you this, people will pay their money to go see Man of Steel, BVS Ultimate Edition, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. And I'm not just talking about Snyder fans. I'm talking about your general DC base. And particularly after all that has happened with DC and Zack Snyder constantly getting vindicated for his earlier films, now more than ever, people will go and see these films. Okay, you could say Zack Snyder was ahead of his time. The studio screwed him over, but this is his moment to harvest. This is his moment to reap the benefits and to make these movies into classics that they ought to be. And these are some of the best-selling movies that DC has. Besides the Dark Knight trilogy, this probably comes in second as the best-selling DC films that they have. And I'm sure Wonder Woman and Aquaman, they do their thing as well. So I'm saying all of this to say that why are we wasting our time, Warner Brothers? Why are we wasting our time on stuff that is not going to give us any kind of return? But even if you want to continue down that path of wasting your money and wasting your time, why is it that you can't open the door for something that will not cost you as much, that's for sure, to put out into cinemas? It's not going to cost you much. It'll cost you distribution, right? It'll cost you some distribution money, right? But the rest is to collect. The films are done. They just need to be put into cinemas. That'll cost you some money. Maybe a little advertising. That'll cost you some money too. But the returns on that are going to be very interesting. Very, very interesting, very, very lucrative. And it may set you a template where you can say, hey, you know what? I got in my archives Beetlejuice and Beetlejuice 2. I got in my archives, well, I know you see, I saw them put out Batman 1989 and Batman Returns. Now, I think it's, again, solely in the US. They're doing it and probably in select cinemas. I would suggest you put out those movies globally to remind people of the movies, not just put them into, but of course, the idea is you do a limited release. And for the limited period of time, you do your calculations to find out what's the acceptable amount of money you want to retain in a limited release. Understanding these films have already been put out, people have seen them before and so on, right? But this is a way for studios to make money. Because if you have a classic, that's what they do with Avatar and all these things. And you don't have to wait till a new movie's about to come out to put these movies out, even though that's a great idea as well. To remind people, and that's the problem with Warner Brothers. They don't have vision. They don't have creativity. They don't have foresight. They don't experiment with ways to make money more efficiently. But I feel like Abdi and DeLuca are that ilk that would do something like that. So I just wanted to reflect on that. I see there's a bunch of you here, and I'm sure a lot of you that are here are gun fans. And again, there's nothing wrong with being a fan of a director, regardless of if that director. I'm a fan of Bill Cosby's work, and Bill Cosby was convicted of drugging women and stuff like that. And I don't condone that, but I can be a fan of the person's creativity. With James Gunn, I'm not a fan of James Gunn's work, period. The only thing I like is Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Volume 2. I've watched that. It really was probably the funniest thing I've ever seen. I did not like Guardians of the Galaxy 1. I didn't like the third Guardians of the Galaxy. I found Little Grout dancing to music while a host of hell and chaos is going around quite charming and quite interesting. It reminded me of Looney Tunes. And I cracked up on seeing the opening scene in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I will tell you this. I'm not really a fan of James Gunn's work, and especially his sexual, raunchy, supposed humor. I also do think he was involved. Again, I don't have evidence for this, but there's a lot of things that point to him being involved in some less desirable behavior throughout his career. But that is symptomatic of Hollywood. Having said all of that, people who enjoy his stuff, people should have creative freedom. People who enjoy his stuff, okay, fine. You enjoy his stuff. Okay? And I can't bash you. I've told people, be unapologetic about what you like. It will tell me something about you, though, what you like. But there's freedom of speech. And so if you're unapologetic about that, it is what it is. All right? So I am not necessarily saying get rid of James Gunn, even though a lot of DC fans are saying fire James Gunn or whatever. I am saying restore the Snyderverse. And I am saying that Abdi and DeLuca, I believe Warner Brothers should look seriously at them. I know they are a minority. I know they get a lot of flack. I know they wanted to fire them. But I think those are the actual people that if I was to helm anything, would helm Warner Brothers Pictures, period. I wouldn't have a DC Studios. I wouldn't bother with all that shit. I would just helm Warner Brothers and have those guys have the final say and sign off on stuff. And I don't know if David Zaslav has the vision to understand that. That Abdi and DeLuca really, they are people who will allow you to go as far as you want to go. I think they are the people who I think are best suited to manage DC and manage Warner Brothers, period. And people will say, well, they have a lot of responsibilities because they're doing original IPs and stuff. No, I don't think so. I think they should just manage DC. DC's not doing well. When they were there with Black Adam, they cleaned up Black Adam quite a lot. And Black Adam wasn't as kooky and funny and jokey as all those other movies that I've seen. Okay? Joker 2 backfired under them. Mad Max spin-off backfired madly under them. And one more movie backfired royally under them. I'm trying to remember which one it is. So, yes. Mickey 17. That also backfired under them. But, I mean, they didn't majorly backfire like James Gunn has been majorly backfiring. You know what I'm saying? You know, that's a part of being creative. You got some movies are not going to do well, and other movies are going to do well. That's just a part of the process. And they're old school. To get a whole set of blockbusters, you got to go through some bombs and some flops. And they're old school. And I'm telling you right now, if there's anybody who would greenlight the Snyderverse, if given the opportunity, it'd be them. You know? And I think they should. Because nothing else is working out here in terms of universe. But I wouldn't tell them to blindly go and, you know, green light the Snyderverse. No. Put this trilogy into cinemas first. See how it performs. Evaluate that. And then determine if you're going to green light the Snyderverse. That's a fair way to go about doing it. That's proper. That's fair. Find the cinema time, placing to put these movies in to cinemas, and then do it. You can start in the fall. We are in the fall, I think. We're out of summer now. So, or start, but announce it. Whatever decision you make, announce it. Full Circle was very, very successful. Very, very successful. And they know, based on Full Circle, that there is a demand for the Snyderverse. They know this. And it's up to them to determine if they want to follow through with that. But I'm telling you, you have 3 movies sitting down there, completed, that can be reintroduced into cinemas. 2 of them have not seen cinemas globally or across America. You do a limited release like Amazon and all these other streaming services do. You see how they perform? You can continue it on streaming with your HBO Max. See if the viewership goes up. And also if the subscription base goes up, or if digital sales for these movies, those versions of the movies goes up. All of these things, you know, because like I said before, and this is not rocket science, there is a tremendous demand for this thing. And the more people oppose it, is the more they make it notorious and something that other people are curious about, you know? So that is my little pitch that took me 40 minutes to finish. I will see you guys later. Thank you for the likes, the subscriptions. This stream was brought to you by LIVE Products. LIVE, Live Now, We Live Now. If you live in the Trinidad and Tobago area, I suggest very strongly that you check out these products that I am talking about. I'll leave you with this advertisement right now. as you celebrate this holiday, you can get LIVE snacks, LIVE punches, or LIVE drinks today. This stock is limited. In the snacks, we have large nuts for $20. And we also have, in the back here, small nuts for $8. We also have 2 different flavors of granola. You have granola mint and chocolate, and you have granola and raisins, each $8. The punches, we have 2 sizes. The big size is $15. The small size is $6. We have the following flavors: sea moss, peanut, Guinness, and beetroot punches. In the drinks, we do not have a lot of the drinks because they've been bought out last night, but we have guava, big and small. The big is $10, the small is $4. Lemon in both sizes. We have orange juice in the small size. We have Moby, lime, sorrel. We have grapefruit in the big size, and we have fruit punch in the small size. They're all in limited amounts. So place your order today. LIVE. Live now. We're live now. You guys have a